Hey everybody, welcome back to Sophisticakes by Mary. For this tutorial, I thought I'd do something a little different than the pastel that I've been doing a lot lately, and do a more gothic-inspired textured stone type finish with some gum paste poppies. So if this sounds interesting, stick around. Now to make the gum paste flowers, we do need a lot of tools. And I could list all these tools for you, but it would be easier if you just take a little screenshot and commit to memory or write down what there is here, because we have all kinds of different tools, some veiners, some alcohol, some yarn, or not yarn, some thread, all kinds of stuff. So take a mental note and then we will get going on how we made these flowers. I started with the stamens. And I did not have some black stamens, but you can purchase black stamens online. I'll try to remember to put a link down here, but Amazon, you should be able to find those. But since I didn't have them, I'm gonna have to make them black all on my own. So I'm just using some regular stamens. I think these were white, they look white. And I'm taking some of that thread and binding together in the middle. There's about 30 different, or 15 different stamens in there. And then bend it in half and use some more thread and anchor that bottom section together. Cut off your excess thread, and now I'm going to color them. I'm just using some black food coloring, gel food coloring, and some Everclear, mixing it together and making a paint. Now this brand tends to be a little bit more on the blue side with the black. As it oxidizes, they do deepen up, but yeah, I'm having problems with getting a black that does not have a green or a blue undertone. But anyway, go ahead and dip them in there, and then I used some of my evergreen petal dust to add a little bit of green depth to the tips, make them look a little bit more natural. I'm taking my wire and using my needle nose plier and creating a little hook there. This is going to be our center for our flower. And I'm using this Wilton mold that does a really good job at starting off your center. Now, hindsight, so you can see there, I'm just smoothing down the edges. It gives you the look of those raised sections in the middle. And I did go back after a while and emphasize those a little bit more. I wish I had done it at this stage, but it was still fine. So I just used the wire and a blowtorch, a creme brulee torch, heat up that end until it is glowing orange and stick it right in your center. Now be careful when you're touching that because you don't want to burn yourself. And that anchors it in. It just kind of melts it right together. And to make this petal, I didn't even use a mat. I just went ahead and kind of rolled it away from the middle. I wanted to have a raised section in the middle there to insert the wire. Now this is actually a moth orchid cutter, I believe. And I'm going to insert the wire the same way as I did with the center. But you need a more wide cutter to get the look of the poppies. They're wide, like oblong shaped petals. That silicone mold mimics the look of the veins in the petal. Those are great. You don't have to do that, but it just helps make them look a little more realistic. Thin out those edges of the petal and put it in your petal former to dry overnight. Now here I'm adding some darker green, some more of that evergreen onto the stamen, the center. And this is where I went in with my veining tool and kind of went in between those raised sections and tried to push it in. Now these had dried some, so that it didn't work as well as it would have if I had done that before they had a chance to set up some. Now take your little bundle of stamens, insert your center straight through the middle, and there you have your center. Now, I only showed you how I made one petal, but I made many, as you can tell, and these had dried overnight. Now, I'm assembling my flower. I'm going to use some floral tape. I'm using the dark green floral tape because these types of flowers have long stems, and I wanted them to show. And I start by activating the glue in the tape by stretching it, wrapping it around that center wire, and then add petals as you go, and twisting and adding. And make sure that you bring that all the way down to the bottom and arrange your petals the way you like. And there's our first poppy. Now I did do two full ones, and then this one I wanted to look like it was the side view of a poppy on the cake. So I just used 2 petals and taped them together. Now that we've got all of our flowers ready, yeah, I didn't go into a lot of details with the flowers because in general I've noticed that the sugar flower, for some reason, they don't get a whole lot of attention. And so I wanted to focus more on the decorating of the cake, but I did want to show how I made those poppies. So we're stacking our cake. We're using buttercream, American buttercream, and I'm using a dark chocolate ganache dam. And just using the offset spatula to smooth that buttercream in between. Now my cakes wanted to tilt this time. They baked up so soft, I don't know why, but that's okay. Just makes it a little bit more of an obstacle to get them frosted. And then I'm using some dark chocolate ganache as a crumb coat and removing the excess. Now we're going to roll out our fondant. I'm going to do the top. I'm going to do this whole thing in a panel. So I need to put a circular disc on top. And this is how I do it. I roll it out, put it on the top, turn your cake upside down, and then cut off the excess. That way you're not dealing with your fondant touching that ganache and getting all marred up. You can reuse that fondant. And it just makes sure that you have a flat top. I just find that that works really well. Now set that in the refrigerator to firm up while you're making your panel. It's the exact same fondant. I used satin ice this time, and I'm just rolling out a long rectangular shaped piece of fondant. I had measured the height and the circumference of the cake, so I knew how big of a piece I needed to roll out. And I'm using my quilting ruler to cut off the excess. I want to have a straight side, one straight side that will go against the bottom. And I'm using a dowel to roll up the fondant, and I'm putting some shortening on the ganache. You could use water, you could use simple syrup if you want to get this attached. And just spin your turntable and unroll it from your dowel. Now, I did add a little water underneath that little panel there so that it would stick, and I'm just kind of tearing the fondant off since I want it to be more of a rustic look, like unfinished. I just tore it instead of cutting it, and I did the same around the top. Now I do know that there's that one section there where it is, you can see where the piece of fondant started. I did try to flatten that out a little bit before I stuck it on, but obviously the difference of the color between the white and the ganache, you can still see it, but that's where I placed a flower to camouflage that. Now to add some stone type texture, I just rolled up some aluminum foil and I'm just pressing it into the fondant before it's set up. A lot of this cake I did before it had a chance to set up to get the texture. And that's just a little piece, it's like a mesh ribbon that is clean and dried, and I'm just pressing that into the fondant also to get just another texture. And this texture you're going to see more as you paint it. It will show the texture more. It'll bring it out because that paint will settle in those little nooks and crannies. And this is the same black food coloring with some Everclear, thinned down quite a bit. And I'm just putting it on with the combinations of methods, with brush, with a sponge, and then I'm using paper towel that is dampened in some more Everclear to kind of blend it in a little bit so it's not so stark. I wanted this to be more like a shadowing effect, like on the edges and kind of in some shadows. Like I said, a lot of different ways of doing this. I just kind of went with how it was looking and adapted as I go. A lot of cake decorating is that, especially abstract. Because you don't know how it's going to turn out until you start, and then you just kind of adjust what you're doing accordingly. And Everclear or vodka, whatever one you're using, can be used by itself to remove some of the color, which is nice. And then I wanted that the torn edge to stand out a little bit more, so I just used my fan brush and I just stippled it along that so that it would be more present. And then I just added some black sanding sugar. That's all that is. Just to kind of grains of concrete. I don't know what, it's just more of the rustic look. And I'm just dipping my finger in water and then dipping it in the sanding sugar and then attaching it to the cake. And now we're just going to place our poppies. I definitely wanted these stems to be seen because poppies are long flowers. They have long stems. So I wanted that to be an obvious part of this cake. And I just made a little clothespin or a little hairpin type deal. Use shaped wire to anchor those stems onto the cake. And I did that for both of these, the full flower and then the partial flower. And then I used some piping gel, that's just piping gel, to get the petals to stick to the cake and to each other. And here's our completed cake with the gum paste poppies. Now, gum paste flowers have been a specialty of mine for a long time, but I've kind of veered away due to the nature of YouTube. But if this is something you guys would like to see more of, let me know and I'll see what I can do. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch my video. And if you'd like to watch some other videos, go ahead and click on the link to one of these other videos shown here. And if you would like to check out my other social media, I am on Facebook and Instagram under the same name, Sophisticakes by Mary. And please take the time to share, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you know when I upload another video. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next tutorial.